Item Number SCP-8771 Object Class Keter Special Containment Procedures SCP-8771 is currently inside the human bloodstream. The FSS Galatea, an Usia-class black vessel, has been deployed into the bloodstream to conduct surveillance of the domain's ecosystems, track SCP-8771's movements across the oceans of blood, and engage it in naval combat when it surfaces. Due to the volatile nature of firmamental travel, especially inside domains that encompass bodily fluids, it is not possible to attack SCP-8771 on direct grounds without incurring mass global casualties. To mitigate this, the Galatea has been retrofitted with an imaginary propulsion system and 4 shafts of meaning, allowing her to traverse the negative space above the human bloodstream and fire upon SCP-8771 from a safe vantage point. The vessel has also been equipped with long-range bathymetric witnessing systems, a dual-layer masquerade engine, and weapons not of this world. Despite the use of body-safe nuclear ordnance, the ongoing combat operations against SCP-8771 have been linked to an astronomical rise in embolisms across the entire human race. Research is currently being undertaken to mitigate this effect, possibly by separating the human species from its blood entirely. The victims of SCP-8771 will be commemorated after its termination mandate has been fulfilled, with plans to build a state-of-the-art Tower of Guilt in 2015. Description: SCP-8771 is a Balenohema ebrius, or Dionysian blood whale. It displaces 100,000 metric tons of blood and measures up to 400 virtual meters in length. Unusual for its species, SCP-8771 is possessed with malice. It is actively hostile to other sanguine wildlife and regularly hunts them for sport. This violent behavior is exceptional among blood-faring creatures, as the hemic ecosystem does not observe normal trophic dynamics and largely consists of non-retaliating self-sufficient organisms. To date, SCP-8771 is the only predator to have ever existed in the human bloodstream. When SCP-8771 kills its prey and produces large amounts of non-blood in its environment, a phenomenon known as a hyper-imminent collapse occurs. Hemic life only exists by virtue of its ability to identify as blood, a process it must actively maintain as a living creature. Any sanguine organism that dies and becomes non-blood will be violently expelled from the firmament, realizing in the physical world as an embolus in a human vascular system. Because the volume of a dead fish far exceeds the volume of a human's blood vessels, the resulting carcass matter will invariably overlap into multiple human bodies, manifesting inside their veins and killing them instantly. Thanks to this effect, SCP-8771 has indirectly caused millions of casualties across the world, a death toll that rises as long as it lives. Discovery: SCP-8771 was initially discovered when a human body manifested inside the population of Vila Reale, a scavenger town on the outskirts of the Portugal Calamity Zone. A collection squad of SCP security personnel was dispatched to the area, where they quickly secured the corpse piecemeal and transported it to a laboratory in Gallo, Iberia for reconstruction. Shortly after regaining consciousness, the body identified itself as Super Gloria Evangelista, a global occult coalition operative stationed in the firmament of blood prior to her death. Physicians were able to sustain a 15-minute conversation with Super Gloria Evangelista before impacting her wall of woe. 1. which could not be penetrated even with the use of dark therapy techniques. Without any options, a 9mm round was compelled through her forehead, and she was returned to a stillness that permitted less voluntary info extraction methods. The knowledge of SCP-8771 was removed from the remembrance of her remains. Addendum 1. SCP-8771. The recently elected leader of the United States, George W. Bush, has agreed to supply the SCP Foundation with hyper-imminent munitions in order to expedite SCP-8771's containment. The SCP Foundation expresses its deepest gratitude towards President Bush, a principled statesman who gently holds in one hand the olive branch of peace and firmly grips in the other the flaming sword of justice. We will deliver a swift and decisive blow to SCP-8771 in honor of your name. Thank you. Addendum 2. The Global Occult Coalition has terminated SCP-8771. Reclassified to neutralized. Item Number SCP-5125. Object Class Keter. Special Containment Procedures. Under no circumstances is SCP-5125's containment unit to be opened. At least one door must remain ajar in all rooms or enclosures with more than one point of entry. Site-16's floor plan has been modified to supplant extraneous chambering with open corridors. Personnel must observe Protocol 5125, Theta, in the event of a breach of containment. SCP-5125's containment unit currently contains 2 deceased humans and 1 active instance of SCP-5125-B. In the event of the SCP-5125-B instance's deflation, additional feed is to be allocated accordingly. Description: SCP-5125 is the designation for a semi-corporeal predatory humanoid entity that primarily hunts and consumes humans in a highly ritualized and methodical behavioral pattern. Identifying facial features are obscured by a viscous mucus with non-Newtonian properties. Locomotion is conducted on all fours, and there are no outward signs of sentience or sapience. SCP-5125 has been known to become incorporeal whilst hunting, and it is not currently known whether SCP-5125 possesses any metabolic functions that necessitate feeding. SCP-5125 exclusively targets a single human individual at a time, with the selected prey being amongst a group of at least 3 individuals. The aforementioned group of humans must also be located in a closed room or space with at least 2 entrance-exit points, both of which must be closed. SCP-5125 will seek out the nearest prey that satisfies this criteria, ignoring geospatial obstructions to its path. Upon selection of its prey, materialization of SCP-5125 is precipitated by electromagnetic interference, typically targeting lighting fixtures. SCP-5125 will then, alongside a dining table with a call bell situated atop it, manifest within the space, and proceed to kneel in front of the table and ring the bell 3 times. The electromagnetic interference will then resume, with SCP-5125's selected prey having been consumed instantaneously amidst the corresponding periods of darkness. SCP-5125 does not eat the eyes, keratinous material, teeth, epithelial tissues, or mucous membranes of its prey, SCP-5125-B. Despite lacking all internal organs and structures, SCP-5125-B still appear to perform all requisite biological functions of an otherwise living human, including sapience. SCP-5125-B instances are generally unaware that they have been consumed by SCP-5125 and will not display any psychological or physical indications of their evisceration. Aforementioned unconsumed tissues are left intact and undamaged, with no breakage or bleeding visible. The continued animation and superficial preservation of the SCP-5125-B will cease upon any of the entrances exits of the physical space being opened, resulting in the subsequent violent deflation and total death of the SCP-5125-B shell. SCP-5125 will remain stationary until its current SCP-5125-B instance is deflated. There are no known methods of intervention during SCP-5125 predation, primarily due to the semi-corporeal nature of the entity. Containment efforts have thus focused on mitigating the relatively specific conditions required by SCP-5125 to hunt. Discovery. SCP-5125 was discovered in Saugus, Massachusetts, USA, following a police report made to authorities via phone. The caller claimed to be being held hostage alongside two of his friends by an unknown individual creature. Details provided suggested a non-human captor, and as such, the Foundation intervened in the case. Upon arrival, attending agents determined the captives to be located in the upstairs bedroom, confirming this by knocking on the door. Shortly after opening the door to the bedroom, a loud, violent bursting sound occurred. Personnel found two of the captives unharmed, though emotionally distressed, and SCP-5125 in the center of the room, rubbing its distended gut. Near the bedroom's desk nook, agents also recovered a pile of deflated epithelial tissue, later confirmed to be the remains of the resident who had originally made the phone call to the authorities. Item Number SCP-8441 Object Class Euclid Special Containment Procedures An area of 1.2 hectares containing SCP-8441 has been purchased and fenced off under the guise of being a habitat for the European green toad, Buphotis viridis. A small dwelling has been constructed on the premises for surveillance and monitoring of SCP-8441. At least 2 Foundation agents are to be present on site at all times. Both are to be remotely screened by a licensed Foundation psychiatrist once a week. Once every 2 weeks, a domestic pig, Suscrofa domesticus, is to be led to the base of SCP-8441, where it then has its carotid arteries severed and is left to bleed out. Barring this procedure, no sharp objects are to be brought onto the property under any circumstances. Description: SCP-8441 is an organism resembling a healthy Norway spruce, Picea abes, of around 80 years of age. It is situated near Redacted, Sweden, in an area that was formerly a commercial spruce plantation, but following a clear-cutting in 1988, has lain fallow until eventually becoming colonized by various native pioneer tree species, primarily silver birch. Despite its appearance, SCP-8441 is not a plant. Microscopic analysis of samples taken from SCP-8441 have shown its cellular makeup to be more akin to that of certain ascomycetic fungi, with the cellular walls of its woody tissue containing chitin rather than lignin and cellulose. Despite possessing external organs with the macroscopic appearance of conifer needles, SCP-8441 does not photosynthesize and does not produce chlorophyll. Rather, these organs contain a combination of orange and blue chromatophoric cells, and seem to serve no other purpose than to mimic foliage. SCP-8441 either does not age, or ages so slowly that no significant changes in its phenotype have been observed since its discovery in 1988. It regenerates injuries far quicker than any non-anomalous organism of its size, being able to regrow large amounts of tissue within only a few hours. Based on its cellular makeup and observed ecology, SCP-8441 is hypothesized to be a heterotrophic organism, meaning that it subsists on external sources of organic carbon rather than airborne carbon dioxide. Specifically, SCP-8441 seems to subsist on blood, absorbed through subterranean structures closely resembling shallow tree roots. To this end, SCP-8441 seems to possess some sort of mechanism capable of attracting suitable prey to its location, where it then injures itself and expires. This process has never been directly observed, and its exact mechanics are, for now, unknown. Discovery. SCP-8441 was discovered on 11/04/1988, following the murder-suicide of 5 forestry workers tasked with harvesting the spruce plantation it stood within. All bodies were found surrounding SCP-8441, left standing after all other trees in the surrounding area had been cut down. They had been heavily mutilated using one of the workers' petrol chainsaws. Forensic evidence suggests that only 2 of the workers were killed in the immediate vicinity of SCP-8441, while 2 others, who had likely attempted to flee, were killed elsewhere and dragged back to SCP-8441 across the forest floor. The final body and ostensible killer's injuries are presumed to be self-inflicted. The man in question, later identified as Leif Auckland, redacted resident, showed no violent tendencies or signs of psychological instability before his death. Due to the unusual nature of these killings, the Foundation intervened to investigate, and soon discovered SCP-8441's strange biological properties. Furthermore, excavations in the vicinity of SCP-8441 discovered an unusually high number of biological remains, mostly belonging to native animal species, but some human. Item Number SCP-8624 Object Class Euclid Special Containment Procedures An aquarium suitable for Pygocentris naturae is maintained at Site-145. 45 instances of SCP-8624 are contained there at time of writing. All water used in this aquarium must be blessed by a member of the clergy of an established religion. SCP-8624 should be fed regularly with fresh human flesh. Currently supplied by Site-145's morgue. Every instance of SCP-8624 in containment must be equipped with a tracking implant that can provide up-to-date location data from anywhere in the world. The implant is also set to deliver a painful electric shock should SCP-8624 exit its aquarium at any point. Reports of unexplained injuries at religious ceremonies, especially baptisms, should be investigated for SCP-8624 involvement. SCP-8624 may be effectively lured and captured by placing human flesh laced with poison into a sufficiently large basin of holy water within several kilometers of the instance. In an emergency, recovery personnel should be prepared to use one of their own fingers for this purpose. Instances of SCP-8624 found in the wild should be killed, unless Site-145's population of SCP-8624 has dropped below 30, in which case they may instead be stunned and transported to Site-145. Description: SCP-8624 is a subspecies of red-bellied piranha, Pygocentris natariri merceri, that is only capable of surviving in holy water. Despite the fact that holy water is chemically identical to non-blessed water from the same source, SCP-8624 will suffocate to death if it is placed in normal water. SCP-8624 is believed to have diverged from baseline Pygocentris natariri 2,500 years ago. SCP-8624 is capable of perceiving all holy water in existence as a single, unbroken body of water. This effect extends to sight, hearing, and smell. They are likewise capable of traversing this body of water without regard for physical barriers or distances involved, thus traveling vast distances by hopping between basins, containers, and fonts of holy water that span the intervening area. SCP-8624 are, in theory, capable of reaching any body of holy water on Earth in under an hour. SCP-8624 exhibits pack-hunting behavior that is not commonly observed in Pygocentris natariri, as well as the ability to leap up to 10 centimeters out of the water to reach food. While SCP-8624 are omnivorous, they prefer human flesh to all other food. SCP-8624 attacks usually result in flesh wounds and the loss of minor appendages. In large quantities, these attacks can be lethal to human infants. It is not clear why SCP-8624 evolved in this fashion, or how they have maintained their population over time. Item Number: SCP-9542. Object Class: Euclid. Special Containment Procedures. SCP-9542 is kept in an oversized humanoid containment cell at Site-37 with standard amenities. Under no circumstances may it be given unsupervised access to cutting, piercing, or writing implements. SCP-9542 has been granted enhanced library privileges, 2 books per week, no content restrictions, and access to a desktop computer with limited internet access, fully supervised, standard whitelist in exchange for advising Site-37's surgical department, contingent on good behavior. Staff may not interact with SCP-9542 except in groups of 3 or more, and may not remove it from its cell without the presence of a full security detail. Additionally, staff must take care not to engage with any statements made by SCP-9542 that are hypothetical, rhetorical, fictitious, or dishonest in nature. Staff who may have been affected by SCP-9542's mind-altering abilities will be subject to psychological evaluation and potential reassignment. Twice per month, SCP-9542 should be provided with 1.0 kilograms of tissue from a recently deceased cadaver and 1 hour of access to one of Site-37's surgical theaters. Materials from feet and legs are preferred, though other limbs are permitted in the event of a shortage. An inventory must be taken of the theater's contents before and after SCP-9542's visit to ensure that it cannot steal surgical implements. Description: SCP-9542 is a human of indeterminate age who has had numerous functional limbs and appendages grafted to its body at various points. Its most notable features are as follows. SCP-9542's weight ranges between 275 and 325 kg. When SCP-9542 is injured, cells near the wound will revert to pluripotent stem cells, which quickly reproduce and differentiate into other cell types as necessary to heal it completely. If recently dead human body parts are held in contact with tissue undergoing this process, SCP-9542's cells will invade the foreign tissue and incorporate that material into its body. While added tissue will adhere to SCP-9542 within minutes, the formation of all connections necessary to render the added tissues functional, neural, vascular, muscular, etc., generally takes 1 to 3 weeks. Cells from the new flesh will diffuse through its body over the course of several years. SCP-9542's immune system, while normally functional, does not reject any new human tissue. SCP-9542 will actively seek out opportunities to graft human limbs and appendages onto its body. If new tissue is not added to its body regularly, tumors will develop in its extremities and grow until they are amputated. Generally, 5 to 10 kilograms of tissue must be removed for each month that SCP-9542 goes without receiving new materials. At time of writing, SCP-9542 is a chimera of at least 430 separate humans. SCP-9542 possesses highly elevated linguistic, social, and spatial intelligence. In particular, SCP-9542 is highly adept at tasks related to storytelling. SCP-9542 is fluent in Dutch, English, Frisian, German, Greek, Latin, Russian, Spanish, Welsh, and Yiddish, as well as the constructed languages Esperanto, Klingon, Ladin, Quenya, Sindarin, Volapük, and at least 3 languages devised by SCP-9542 itself. SCP-9542 is capable of low-level hypnosis through collaborative storytelling. Any person who works with SCP-9542 to create a fictional narrative and is exposed to material produced by SCP-9542 in the process is susceptible to this effect. This has been established to occur whether the collaboration is carried out in person or remotely, and whether it is done synchronously or asynchronously. SCP-9542 can adjust the worldview of its collaborators by rendering a story's setting or characters in a manner slightly different than what the subject would consider realistic. Subjects affected this way will view the changes as plausible and desirable, adjusting their own thought processes to match. While this effect is minor, it is cumulative, allowing SCP-9542 to shape a victim's perception of reality drastically over the course of an extended collaboration. The victim will remain unaware of how SCP-9542 is affecting them and are difficult to convince of the matter. Speculative fiction. Is much more effective than other genres, as SCP-9542 can use the fantastic setting to justify more dramatic deviations from reality. SCP-9542 will attempt to acquire new limbs by convincing its collaborators to amputate their own limbs or those of others. It will vary its exact methodology to suit its victims' pre-existing personality and beliefs, though it will usually induce delusions of a conspiratorial, religious, and/or medical nature. History. SCP-9542 reports being born as the fifth son of a German noble family in 1555. SCP-9542's written works, aliases, and collaborators all number in the hundreds. Its 1987 autobiography, as well as the results of the Foundation's own inconclusive investigation, are available upon request. SCP-9542's most extensive collaboration in terms of volume was with horror and weird fiction author The pair exchanged 3,708 letters over the course of 18 years, focusing on matters of race, science, and literary technique. SCP-9542's contributions to Lovecraft's Cthulhu mythos allowed it to convince Lovecraft and several of his contemporaries that their non-dominant hands posed an impediment to their writing abilities, thus inducing them to remove the offending appendages. SCP-9542 claims to still use Lovecraft's left hand to transcribe its speech into English. SCP-9542's longest-lasting interpersonal relationship, ranging from 1933 to 1972, was with fantasy author J.R.R. Tolkien. SCP-9542 and Tolkien's discussions typically focused on linguistics. In particular, SCP-9542 assisted Tolkien in the development of several constructed languages, including several that would later appear in Lord of the Rings. SCP-9542 claims that it made no effort to affect Tolkien's mind, describing their relationship as strictly for the sake of mutual enlightenment. SCP-9542 came to the Foundation's attention in 1976, following its involvement in the Pepper Pike D&D murders. SCP-9542 had become involved with 4 teenagers in Pepper Pike, Ohio, and convinced them to join it in a campaign of the recently published Dungeons & Dragons role-playing game. The campaign lasted for 8 months, with SCP-9542 as the group's dungeon master. Over time, SCP-9542 was able to convince its victims that their family members had been replaced by malicious homunculi, which could only be destroyed through a particular satanic ritual. SCP-9542 provided assistance in exchange for the limbs that would be amputated during the ritual. On August 23, the teenagers murdered 9 of their close family members in a ritualistic fashion. The events received international media coverage due to their scale and gruesome nature. The actions of the victims were popularly attributed to an obsession with Dungeons and Dragons. SCP-9542 successfully avoided scrutiny from media or law enforcement in the aftermath of the murders, having convinced its players to take full credit for the scheme, but a Foundation-led inquiry was able to locate SCP-9542 and contain it without incident. While the Pepper Pike D&D murders were successfully erased from the historical record and popular memory, many civilians continued to subconsciously associate Dungeons & Dragons with delusions and ritualistic murder, fueling unrelated controversies regarding the game. In the 32 years since its containment, SCP-9542 has written 13 novels and completed 61 short stories in various genres of speculative fiction. These documents have been shown to have no anomalous properties and have since been published under various aliases as an additional source of revenue for the Foundation.